Civilizations rise, flourish, and vanish, leaving behind fragments that whisper faintly through time. Some are remembered in textbooks, others survive only in myths, and many disappear almost completely, swallowed by earth, sea, or silence. The story of forgotten worlds is not one of ghosts or legends alone, but of real societies that built, dreamed, and lived before fading into obscurity. Why do some civilizations endure in memory while others vanish? The reasons are varied. Rivers that shifted course, seas that rose to drown coastlines, wars that shattered cities, or climates that turned fertile lands into deserts. Sometimes decline was slow, a gradual fading of power. Other times it was sudden, a catastrophe that erased entire cultures in a generation. Yet even when the people were gone, traces remained. A broken wall, a carved stone, a myth told around fires. These fragments are like lullabies from the past, humming softly to remind us that humanity has always been fragile, always temporary, always dreaming of permanence, while the sands of time quietly cover everything. Forgotten worlds are not frightening shadows, but gentle reminders that history is a quilt stitched together with missing pieces. Each lost civilization is a patch faded by time, yet still part of the larger pattern. Their ruins whisper in moonlight, their myths murmur in the dark, and the stars above blink knowingly, as if they have seen it all before. To study them is to listen closely to echoes, to follow faint trails into the silence, and to realize that our own age, too, may one day be remembered only in fragments. The story of forgotten civilizations begins here, in the quiet recognition that history is not a straight line, but a rhythm, rise, fall, and memory. What remains is not only stone and myth, but the lesson that nothing is permanent and everything is part of the cycle. And now, before you nod off completely, like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments from where you're watching, preferably while half asleep, wrapped in a blanket, wondering why history feels like a lullaby tonight. In the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, a people emerged who would shape the foundations of human history. The Sumerians, often called the world's first true civilization, built cities where none had stood before. Their settlements, Ur, Uruk, Lagash, Eridu, rose from the plains like islands of stone and clay, each crowned with towering ziggurats that reached toward the heavens. The Sumerians were not only builders of walls and temples, they were inventors of memory. They pressed wedge-shaped marks into clay tablets, creating cuneiform, the earliest known writing system. With these marks, they recorded trade, laws, myths, and prayers, ensuring that their voices would echo long after their cities fell silent. Writing transformed them from a people of fleeting words into a civilization of permanence. Their gods were many, each tied to natural forces and human needs. Anu ruled the sky, Enlil commanded the winds, Inanna embodied love and war. Temples were not just places of worship, but centers of power, where priests mediated between mortals and the divine. Rituals, offerings, and festivals filled their calendar, weaving religion into the rhythm of daily life. The Sumerians also pioneered governance. Kings ruled city-states, balancing authority with councils and assemblies. They created laws to regulate trade, property, and justice, laying the groundwork for systems that would echo through later empires. Their innovations extended to irrigation canals, agricultural techniques, and mathematics, all designed to tame the rivers and measure the world. Yet their civilization was fragile. Rivalries between city-states led to wars, while shifting rivers and salinized soils strained their agriculture. Over centuries, their power waned, absorbed into the empires of Akkad and Babylon. The Sumerians themselves faded, but their legacy endured, writing, law, myth, and the very idea of the city. Today, fragments of clay tablets and ruins of ziggurats remind us of their brilliance. The Sumerians were the first to carve humanity's story into permanence, the first to whisper across millennia. Though their names are faint, their influence is everywhere, woven into the fabric of civilization itself. Along the banks of the Nile, a civilization flourished that became one of the most enduring and iconic in human history. Ancient Egypt was more than pyramids rising against the desert sky. It was a world of gods, rituals, and ingenious technologies woven into daily life. The Nile was the lifeblood of Egypt. Its annual floods brought fertile soil, allowing farmers to grow wheat and barley in abundance. This rhythm of the river shaped their calendar, their festivals, and their sense of order. Life in Egypt was inseparable from the river's steady pulse. Religion infused every aspect of existence. The Egyptians believed in a vast pantheon of gods. Ra, the sun god, sailed across the sky each day. Osiris ruled the underworld. Isis embodied magic and motherhood. Temples were not only places of worship, but centers of power, where priests performed rituals to maintain harmony between the divine and the mortal. Their fascination with eternity led to extraordinary practices. Mummification preserved bodies for the afterlife, while tombs were filled with treasures, food, and texts to guide souls beyond death. The pyramids, though monumental, were only part of this obsession with immortality. Smaller tombs, richly decorated with hieroglyphs and paintings, reveal a culture deeply concerned with the journey after life. Egyptian knowledge extended far beyond religion. They mastered engineering, aligning temples with stars and constructing monuments with precision that still puzzles modern builders. Their medicine included surgical techniques and herbal remedies. Their mathematics allowed them to measure land and design structures that endured for millennia. Yet Egypt was not immune to decline. Invasions, internal struggles, and shifting powers eventually weakened its dynasties. The grandeur of the Old Kingdom gave way to the turbulence of later periods, and foreign rulers absorbed Egypt into their empires. Still, the monuments remained, silent guardians of a civilization that refused to be forgotten. Today, the pyramids, temples, and hieroglyphs stand as echoes of a world that believed in eternity. Ancient Egypt was more than stone. It was a civilization that sought to bridge the mortal and the divine, leaving behind a legacy that continues to fascinate and inspire. In the northwestern plains of South Asia, along the Indus River and its tributaries, a civilization flourished more than 4,000 years ago that remains one of history's most intriguing mysteries. Known today as the Indus Valley Civilization, or Harappan culture, it was vast, sophisticated, and strikingly advanced, yet so much about it remains undeciphered. Their cities were marvels of urban planning. At Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, and dozens of other sites, streets ran in straight lines, intersecting at right angles, forming grids that resemble modern city layouts. Houses were built with standardized bricks, often with private wells and bathrooms. Drainage systems carried waste away. showing an understanding of sanitation that would not be matched in many parts of the world for millennia. Trade thrived across their lands. Seals carved with animals and symbols were used to mark goods, suggesting a system of commerce and identity. Archaeologists have found evidence of trade stretching as far as Mesopotamia, linking the Indus people to distant cultures. Their artisans crafted jewelry, pottery, and tools with remarkable skill, leaving behind objects that still gleam with quiet beauty. Yet the greatest mystery of the Indus Valley lies in their script. Hundreds of symbols appear on seals and tablets, but no one has yet deciphered them. Without translation, their voices remain locked away, their stories untold. We know they organized, traded, and built, but we do not know what they believed, how they governed, or how they saw themselves. The decline of the Indus Valley civilization is equally mysterious. Climate change may have shifted rivers, drought may have weakened agriculture, or invasions may have disrupted their cities. Whatever the cause, their urban centers were abandoned, and their culture faded, leaving behind ruins that whisper of a people both advanced and enigmatic. Today, the Indus Valley civilization stands as a reminder that not all history is fully known. Their cities show brilliance, their artifacts reveal artistry, but their script keeps their secrets hidden. They are a lost voice in the chorus of human history, silent, yet still echoing through the bricks and stones they left behind. On the island of Crete, surrounded by the blue waters of the Mediterranean, a civilization flourished that seemed almost dreamlike in its artistry and mystery. The Minoans, named after the legendary king Minos, built palaces that were not fortresses but labyrinths of light and color. Their greatest center, Knossos, was a sprawling complex of courtyards, staircases, storerooms, and frescoes so intricate that later generations imagined it as the mythical labyrinth itself. The Minoans were masters of the sea. Their ships carried goods across the Mediterranean, linking Crete to Egypt, the Near East, and the Greek mainland. Trade brought wealth, and wealth fueled art. Frescoes painted on palace walls showed dolphins leaping, dancers moving in rhythm, and priests performing rituals. Their art was vibrant, alive, and unlike anything else of its time. Religion infused their culture. The bull was a sacred symbol, appearing in myths and rituals. The famous bull-leaping fresco depicts acrobats vaulting over the animal's back, a spectacle that may have been both sport and ceremony. Goddesses of fertility and nature dominated their pantheon, suggesting a society where women held significant roles in ritual and perhaps in power. Yet the Minoans were not invincible. Around 1600 BCE, the eruption of Thera Santorini devastated the region. Ash darkened skies, tsunamis struck coasts, and climate shifts disrupted agriculture. Though the Minoans survived for a time, their strength waned, and eventually they were absorbed into the rising Mycenaean culture of mainland Greece. The myths of King Minos, the Minotaur, and the labyrinth may be echoes of this civilization, preserved in story long after its palaces fell silent. The ruins of Knossos still stand, stairways leading nowhere. Frescoes faded, but still vivid enough to remind us of a people who danced with bulls, painted with joy, and built labyrinths that captured the imagination of the world. The Minoans of Crete remain one of history's most enchanting mysteries, a civilization of beauty and myth, erased by nature yet remembered in legend. In the humid lowlands of what is now southern Mexico, A civilization emerged more than 3,000 years ago that would shape the future of Mesoamerica. The Olmecs, often called the mother culture of the Americas, left behind monuments so massive and mysterious that they still puzzle archaeologists today. The most iconic of their creations are the colossal stone heads. Carved from basalt, some weighing many tons, these heads stare silently across time, their features distinct and expressive. Each seems to represent rulers or important figures immortalized in stone. Transporting and carving them required immense skill and organization, hinting at a society with powerful leaders and advanced techniques. The Olmecs were not only sculptors, but innovators. They developed ceremonial centers, complete with plazas, pyramids, and ball courts. Their art depicted jaguars, serpents, and hybrid creatures, symbols of power and spirituality. Rituals likely involved shamanic practices, connecting the human world with the divine through transformation and sacrifice. Trade networks stretched across Mesoamerica. Jade, obsidian, and other precious materials flowed through Olmec lands, linking distant peoples. Their influence spread far beyond their own territory, shaping the cultures that followed the Maya, the Aztec, and others who inherited elements of Olmec religion, art, and urban design. Yet much about the Olmecs remains hidden. Their writing system, if it existed, has not been fully deciphered. Their political structures are unclear, and their decline is still debated. Climate shifts, resource depletion, or internal conflict may have played a role. By around 400 BCE, their great centers were abandoned, leaving behind only the silent stone heads and scattered ruins. The Olmecs remind us that even civilizations without written records can profoundly shape history. Their legacy lives on in the cultures that followed, in myths of jaguar gods, in ball games played for centuries, and in the enduring gaze of stone faces that seem to watch us still. They were the first great civilization of Mesoamerica, a foundation upon which later empires would rise. Deep in the jungles of Central America, the Maya built a civilization that gazed not only at the earth beneath their feet, but at the heavens above. Their cities Tikal, Palenque, Copan, Chichen Itza rose with pyramids that seemed to touch the sky, temples aligned with celestial events, and plazas where rituals unfolded beneath the stars. The Maya were master astronomers. They tracked the movements of the sun, moon, and planets with astonishing precision. Their calendars were not simple tools for marking days, but complex systems that mapped cycles of time, predicting eclipses and charting cosmic rhythms. To them, the heavens were a living text, a story written in light. Their prophets and priests interpreted these celestial signs, weaving them into rituals and prophecies. Time itself was sacred, divided into cycles that carried meaning beyond mere chronology. The famous long count calendar, often misunderstood in modern times, reflected their belief in ages of creation and destruction, each part of a cosmic rhythm that echoed through human life. The Maya were also builders and artists. Their cities featured towering pyramids, ball courts where ritual games were played, and stele carved with intricate glyphs. Their writing system, one of the most sophisticated in the ancient world, recorded dynasties, battles, and myths. Painted ceramics and murals revealed scenes of gods, rulers, and daily life, vibrant even after centuries. Yet their civilization faced decline. Around the 9th century, many great cities were abandoned. Scholars debate the causes: drought, warfare, overpopulation, or political upheaval. Whatever the reason, The jungle reclaimed their temples, wrapping stone in vines and silence. Later, Maya kingdoms endured, but the grandeur of the classic period faded into mystery. Still, the Maya legacy endures. Their descendants live across Central America, carrying traditions, languages, and rituals that link them to their ancestors. The pyramids rise from the jungle, the glyphs whisper from stone, and the stars continue to shine as they once did for Maya astronomers. The Maya remind us that civilizations are not only built on Earth, but written in the sky. Their prophets saw time as a cycle, their astronomers mapped the heavens, and their builders carved temples that still stand as bridges between the human and the cosmic. They were dreamers of eternity, and their echoes remain. In the Valley of Mexico, the Aztecs built one of the most dazzling and formidable empires of the ancient world. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, rose from the waters of Lake Texcoco like a vision, a city of canals, causeways, and towering temples, home to hundreds of thousands of people. Spanish conquistadors who first saw it compared it to Venice, marveling at its scale and beauty. The Aztecs believed their gods demanded devotion in the most dramatic forms. Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, required nourishment to keep the cosmos in balance. Ritual sacrifice, though shocking to modern eyes, was central to their worldview. They believed that without offerings of blood, the sun itself might fail to rise. Temples, such as the Templo Mayor, were stages for these ceremonies, where priests performed rites that bound the people to their gods. Their society was highly organized. Nobles, warriors, priests, and merchants each had roles that sustained the empire. Markets bustled with goods from across Mesoamerica: cacao, feathers, obsidian, and textiles. Tribute flowed into Tenochtitlan from conquered regions, fueling the city's grandeur and reinforcing Aztec dominance. Art and architecture reflected their power. Sculptures depicted gods and warriors. Codices recorded myths and histories, and pyramids rose as symbols of both religious devotion and political might. The Aztecs were also skilled engineers, building aqueducts to supply fresh water and chinampas, floating gardens to feed their vast population. Yet their empire was short-lived. In Iwu-Ijo, Hernan Cortes and his Spanish forces arrived, aided by rival indigenous groups who resented Aztec rule. Disease, warfare, and betrayal combined to topple Tenochtitlan by Iwu-Aryi. The city was destroyed, its temples dismantled, and its people subdued. Still, the Aztec legacy endures. Their myths, art, and traditions survive in modern Mexico, woven into culture and identity. The ruins of Tenochtitlan lie beneath Mexico City, silent reminders of a civilization that rose with brilliance and fell with sudden violence. The Aztecs remind us that power and devotion can build empires of astonishing beauty, but also that fragility lies beneath grandeur. Their gods, temples, and sacrifices remain among the most vivid echoes of the ancient world. High in the rugged Andes Mountains of South America, the Inca civilization rose to power, weaving together one of the most remarkable empires the world has ever seen. Stretching across vast landscapes, from coastal deserts to snow-capped peaks, the Incas built a network of cities, roads, and terraces that defied geography itself. Their capital, Cusco, was the heart of the empire, a city laid out in the shape of a puma, symbol of strength. From there, the Incas ruled with a system that combined military might, administrative organization, and spiritual devotion. They believed their emperor, the Sapa Inca, was a descendant of the sun god, Inti, giving divine authority to their rule. The Incas were master builders. Machu Picchu, perched high above the Urubamba River, remains their most famous achievement. Its terraces, temples, and stone walls blend seamlessly with the mountain landscape, as if nature and architecture were one. The precision of their stonework is astonishing. Massive blocks fitted together without mortars, so tightly that centuries of earthquakes have failed to topple them. Their engineering extended beyond monuments. The Incas built thousands of miles of roads and bridges, connecting distant regions of their empire. Messengers, called chasqui, ran these roads, carrying information across mountains and valleys. Agricultural terraces transformed steep slopes into fertile fields, while irrigation systems brought water to dry lands. Society was organized with remarkable efficiency. The Incas practiced communal labor, known as mita, where citizens contributed work to state projects. In return, the empire provided food, protection, and stability. Their economy was not based on money, but on reciprocity and redistribution, a system that sustained millions across diverse environments. Yet their empire was fragile against forces they could not foresee. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, disease had already weakened the population. Civil war between rival claimants to the throne further fractured their unity. Within decades, the mighty Inca Empire collapsed, its rulers executed, its cities plundered. Still, the legacy of the Incas endures. Their descendants live across the Andes, carrying traditions, languages, and rituals that link them to their ancestors. Machu Picchu stands as a silent guardian. Terraces cling to mountainsides, and the memory of the Inca road system lingers in paths still walked today. The Incas remind us that human ingenuity can conquer even the harshest landscapes. They were builders of the Andes, dreamers of stone and sky, and though their empire fell, their achievements continue to inspire awe across centuries. Few stories of lost civilizations have captured the human imagination as powerfully as Atlantis. First described by the Greek philosopher Plato in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, Atlantis was said to be a mighty island kingdom, rich in resources, advanced in knowledge, and dazzling in beauty. Its people, according to the tale, grew proud and corrupt, and in a single day and night of misfortune, the island was swallowed by the sea. For centuries, scholars, explorers, and dreamers have debated whether Atlantis was a real place or a symbolic allegory. Some argue that Plato intended it as a moral lesson, a warning about hubris and the dangers of unchecked power. Others believe he may have drawn on older traditions, memories of ancient catastrophes, or even accounts of real societies that vanished beneath the waves. Theories abound. Some place Atlantis in the Mediterranean, linking it to the eruption of Thera Santorini that devastated the Minoans. Others suggest it lay in the Atlantic Ocean, perhaps near the Azores or Canary Islands. More imaginative proposals point to the Caribbean, Antarctica, or even beneath the Sahara Desert. Each theory reflects humanity's longing to connect myth with history, to find truth in legend. Archaeological evidence remains elusive. No definitive ruins have been found, no inscriptions naming Atlantis discovered. Yet the persistence of the story suggests it resonates with something deeper, the memory of floods, earthquakes, and civilizations erased by nature's power. Ancient peoples across the world told of cataclysms, and Atlantis may be one more echo of those forgotten disasters. Whether real or imagined, Atlantis endures as a symbol. It represents the fragility of civilizations, the dangers of arrogance, and the mystery of worlds lost to time. Its legend has inspired explorers, writers, and seekers for millennia, reminding us that beneath the waves and sands, history may still hide secrets waiting to be uncovered. Atlantis remains suspended between myth and reality, a dream of a perfect world undone, a cautionary tale wrapped in mystery, and a lullaby of ruins whispered across centuries. Beyond the boundaries of recorded history, whispers of civilizations that may never have existed continue to drift through human imagination. Among these are Lemuria and Mu, legendary lands said to lie beneath the oceans, erased by floods and tectonic shifts, remembered only in myth and speculation. The idea of Lemuria first emerged in the 19th century, when scientists puzzled over the distribution of certain plants and animals across distant continents. To explain these similarities, some proposed a lost landmass in the Indian Ocean, a bridge that once connected Madagascar, India, and Southeast Asia. Though later geological discoveries dismissed the theory, the name Lemuria lingered, transformed into a myth of a vanished civilization. Mu, meanwhile, entered the stage through the writings of explorers and mystics who claimed that an advanced culture once thrived in the Pacific Ocean. According to these tales, Mu was a vast continent, home to millions, with temples, knowledge, and wisdom beyond imagining. Cataclysm struck, and the land sank beneath the waves, leaving only scattered islands as remnants. Neither Lemuria nor Mu has been proven to exist. No ruins have been found, no inscriptions discovered, no artifacts unearthed. Yet the legends persist, carried by storytellers, spiritual seekers, and dreamers who insist that the sea hides more than fish. The myths of sunken continents resonate with humanity's deep memory of floods, earthquakes, and disasters that erased real cultures in the past. These stories are not simply fantasies. They are reflections of our longing to connect with forgotten worlds. They remind us that oceans cover vast mysteries, that human imagination often fills gaps in knowledge with visions of grandeur, and that the line between myth and memory is sometimes blurred. Lemuria and Mu may never have existed as physical places, but they endure as symbols of possibility. They represent the idea that civilizations can vanish without a trace, that knowledge can be lost, and that the sea itself may be a keeper of secrets. In the quiet of night, when waves crash against unseen shores, the legends of Lemuria and Mu drift like lullabies, reminding us that not all mysteries are meant to be solved. In the deserts of the Middle East, hidden among rose-red cliffs and winding canyons, the Nabatean kingdom thrived as one of antiquity's most remarkable trading powers. Their capital, Petra, carved directly into sandstone mountains, remains one of the most breathtaking archaeological sites in the world, a city half-built, half-sculpted, glowing softly in the desert light. The Nabateans were masters of trade, controlling routes that connected Arabia, the Levant, and the Mediterranean. They dealt in spices, incense, textiles, and precious stones. Caravans laden with goods passed through their lands, enriching Petra and other centers with wealth and influence. Their position allowed them to act as middlemen between distant cultures, weaving together economies across continents. Their engineering was equally impressive. In a land where water was scarce, the Nabateans devised ingenious systems of cisterns, aqueducts, and channels to capture and store rainfall. These innovations sustained their cities and allowed them to flourish in an environment that seemed inhospitable. Petra itself was not only a trading hub, but a marvel of hydraulic design, where water flowed through carefully hidden conduits. Religion and culture blended with their trade. Temples and tombs carved into cliffs reveal a fusion of influences. Hellenistic styles mingled with local traditions, Egyptian motifs alongside Mesopotamian echoes. The famous treasury, with its ornate facade, stands as a symbol of this cultural synthesis, a monument that seems both familiar and otherworldly. Yet the Nabatean kingdom was not destined to last. As Roman power expanded, the Nabateans were eventually absorbed into the empire in the 2nd century CE. Petra declined, its trade routes shifting, its grandeur fading. Over time, the city was forgotten by much of the world, hidden in desert silence until rediscovered centuries later. Today, Petra stands as a silent witness to Nabatean ingenuity. Its facades glow at sunrise and sunset, its tombs echo with forgotten voices, and its water channels remind us of a people who thrived in the harshest of landscapes. The Nabateans were traders, engineers, and artists, a kingdom carved into stone and memory, now remembered as one of history's most extraordinary lost civilizations. Before Rome rose to dominate the Italian peninsula, another people thrived in its hills and valleys, the Etruscans. Their civilization, flourishing between the 8th and 3rd centuries BCE, remains one of history's most enigmatic cultures. Though they influenced Rome profoundly, much of their own identity has been lost, leaving behind fragments that whisper of a society both sophisticated and mysterious. The Etruscans were skilled builders and artists. Their cities featured impressive walls, temples, and tombs carved into rock. Inside these tombs, frescoes depicted banquets, dances, and rituals, offering glimpses into their daily life and beliefs. Their art was vibrant, filled with movement and color, suggesting a people who celebrated life even in death. Religion played a central role in their world. The Etruscans believed in signs and omens, interpreting the flight of birds, the patterns of lightning, and the entrails of animals to understand the will of the gods. Priests held great authority, guiding decisions through divination. This deep concern with fate and the divine later influenced Roman religion, which borrowed heavily from Etruscan practices. Their language remains one of the great puzzles of antiquity. Inscriptions survive, but the Etruscan tongue has never been fully deciphered. Without translation, their voices remain faint, their stories incomplete. We know they traded widely, crafted jewelry and bronze, and organized complex societies, but much of their inner world is hidden behind undeciphered words. The Etruscans also shaped politics and culture in ways Rome would inherit. They introduced the arch in architecture, influenced Roman dress and symbols of authority, and may have even contributed to the early structure of Roman government. Yet, as Rome grew stronger, the Etruscans were gradually absorbed, their cities conquered, their culture overshadowed. By the 3rd century BCE, the Etruscans had faded as a distinct people, their legacy woven into Rome's rise. What remains are tombs, artifacts, and fragments of language, echoes of a civilization that shaped one of history's greatest empires, yet remains largely forgotten itself. The Etruscans remind us that even when a culture disappears, its influence can endure, hidden in the foundations of those who follow. They were mysterious Italians, guardians of rituals and art, whose shadows still linger in the story of Rome. On the coast of North Africa, facing the blue expanse of the Mediterranean, rose a city that rivaled Rome itself, Carthage. Founded by Phoenician settlers from Tyre, Carthage grew from a trading outpost into a mighty empire, commanding fleets, colonies, and commerce across the seas. For centuries, it was the beating heart of a civilization that thrived on trade, innovation, and resilience. Carthage's strength lay in its navy. Sleek ships carried goods and soldiers across the Mediterranean, linking Carthage to Spain, Sicily, and beyond. Its merchants dealt in metals, textiles, grain, and exotic goods, weaving together a network of wealth that made the city one of the richest in antiquity. The harbor of Carthage was a marvel of engineering, with docks, warehouses, and facilities designed to sustain fleets and commerce on a grand scale. Religion infused their society. The Carthaginians worshipped Baal-Hamon and Tanit, deities of fertility, storms, and protection. Temples rose in their honor, and rituals bound the people to their gods. Though later accounts from Rome painted Carthaginian practices in dark tones, much of their spiritual life remains shrouded in mystery, filtered through the lens of their enemies. Carthage's greatest challenge came from Rome. The two powers clashed in the Punic Wars, a series of conflicts that shook the ancient world. Hannibal, Carthage's most famous general, marched his army, complete with war elephants, across the Alps to strike at Rome itself. His campaigns became legendary, a testament to Carthaginian daring and skill. Yet, despite his brilliance, Rome endured, and the wars dragged on. The final Punic War ended in catastrophe for Carthage. In 146 BCE, Roman legions besieged the city, and after brutal fighting, Carthage was destroyed. Its walls were torn down, its people killed or enslaved, and its memory nearly erased. Rome sought not only victory but obliteration, ensuring that Carthage would never rise again. Yet, Carthage was not entirely lost. Its legacy lived on in trade routes, cultural exchanges, and the echoes of its struggle against Rome. Archaeological remains, harbors, walls, artifacts remind us of its grandeur. Hannibal's name still resonates as one of history's greatest military minds. Carthage stands as a symbol of both brilliance and fragility. It was a city of wealth, ships, and daring, undone by rivalry with a power that refused to yield. Though Rome tried to erase it, Carthage endures in memory, a forgotten empire that once challenged the greatest of the ancient world. In the deserts and mesas of the American Southwest, a civilization once thrived that left behind some of the most haunting and beautiful ruins in North America. Known today as the ancestral Pueblones, or Anasazi, they built communities that clung to cliffs, sprawled across canyons, and echoed with the rhythms of a people deeply connected to land and sky. Their homes were extraordinary. At places like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon, they constructed dwellings of stone and adobe, tucked into cliff faces or arranged in vast complexes. Multi-story structures rose against the desert backdrop, with rooms, plazas, and kivas, circular ceremonial chambers, that reveal a society both practical and spiritual. These cliff dwellings, perched high above the ground, seem almost like nests, safe yet exposed, silent yet enduring. The ancestral Pueblones were skilled farmers, coaxing life from arid soil. They grew maize, beans, and squash, using irrigation and dry farming techniques to sustain their communities. Their ability to adapt to harsh environments speaks to ingenuity and resilience, a quiet triumph against the challenges of desert living. Trade connected them to distant peoples. Turquoise, shells, and pottery moved along networks that stretched across the region, linking the Pueblans to cultures far beyond their mesas. Their pottery, decorated with intricate designs, still speaks of artistry and identity, each vessel a fragment of their voice. Yet their story carries mystery. Around the late 13th century, many of their great settlements were abandoned. Scholars debate the reasons: prolonged drought, resource depletion, conflict, or social upheaval. Whatever the cause, the cliff dwellings fell silent, their rooms emptied, their fires extinguished. The people did not vanish entirely. Descendants live today among modern Pueblo communities, but the grandeur of their ancient cities faded into ruins. The silence of those abandoned homes is striking. Windows stare out across canyons, doorways open into emptiness. Kivas lie unused beneath the desert sun. The ruins seem to hum with memory, as if the stones themselves remember the laughter, rituals, and daily life that once filled them. The ancestral Pueblones remind us that even in the harshest landscapes, human creativity can flourish. They built cities in cliffs, carved communities into stone, and left behind echoes that still resonate. Their abandonment remains a mystery, but their legacy endures in the living traditions of Pueblo peoples today, and in the haunting beauty of ruins that cling to desert walls like whispers of a forgotten world. In the rugged lands of Anatolia, a people rose to power who would become one of the great superpowers of the ancient Near East. The Hittites, flourishing in the 2nd millennium BCE, built an empire that rivaled Egypt, Babylon, and Assyria. Yet their memory faded so deeply that for centuries they were little more than a name in old texts. Only in modern times did archaeology uncover the scale of their achievements, revealing a civilization both formidable and forgotten. The Hittites were warriors and statesmen. Their armies wielded iron weapons at a time when most of the world still relied on bronze, giving them a decisive edge in battle. Chariots thundered across plains, carrying soldiers into conflicts that shaped the destiny of kingdoms. Their military power allowed them to expand across Anatolia and into Syria, forging an empire that stretched from the Aegean to the edges of Mesopotamia. Yet they were not only conquerors. The Hittites were skilled diplomats, negotiating treaties with rivals and allies alike. The most famous of these was the peace treaty with Egypt after the Battle of Kadesh around 1259 BCE, one of the earliest known written treaties in history. This agreement between Pharaoh Ramesses II and the Hittite king, Hattusili III, marked a rare moment of balance between two mighty empires. Their capital, Hattusa, was a city of walls, gates, and temples, perched among the hills of central Anatolia. Within its archives lay thousands of clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform, recording laws, myths, rituals, and correspondence. These texts reveal a society that valued order, religion, and the written word, preserving voices that would otherwise have been lost. Religion infused their world. The Hittites worshipped a pantheon of gods, many borrowed from neighboring cultures, reflecting their openness to influence. Storm gods, sun goddesses, and deities of fertility filled their myths, while rituals and festivals bound communities together. Their culture was a tapestry woven from diverse traditions, a reflection of their empire's reach. But like many great powers, the Hittites faced decline. Internal struggles, invasions, and the mysterious upheavals of the late Bronze Age brought their empire to collapse. Around 1200 BCE, Hattusa was abandoned, its walls crumbling, its archives buried in silence. For centuries, the Hittites vanished from memory, their names surviving only faintly in biblical references. Modern archaeology resurrected them. Excavations uncovered Hattusa's ruins, its gates adorned with lions and sphinxes, its tablets filled with forgotten words. The rediscovery of the Hittites transformed our understanding of the ancient world, revealing a civilization that had once stood among its greatest powers. The Hittites remind us that even empires of iron and diplomacy can vanish into obscurity. They were warriors, builders, and negotiators, a people who shaped history yet slipped into silence. Their rediscovery is a testament to the patience of time, the persistence of memory, and the enduring fascination of civilizations lost and found again. Long before Rome or Greece dominated the Mediterranean, the Phoenicians carved their legacy upon the waves. Emerging from the coastal cities of Tyre, Sidon, and Byblus, they were not conquerors of land, but rulers of trade, exploration, and communication. Their ships, sleek and sturdy, carried goods and ideas across seas, making them the great navigators of the ancient world. The Phoenicians were merchants above all. They traded timber from Lebanon's famed cedar forests, purple dye extracted from murex shells, glass, and fine textiles. Their purple dye became a symbol of royalty, so costly and rare that it was reserved for kings and emperors. Through commerce, they linked distant cultures, spreading wealth and influence far beyond their small homeland. They were also innovators. The Phoenicians developed one of history's most important inventions, the alphabet. Simple, flexible, and efficient, it replaced complex writing systems with a set of symbols that represented sounds. This alphabet spread through trade and contact, eventually influencing Greek and Latin scripts, the very foundation of modern writing. Exploration defined their spirit. Phoenician sailors ventured beyond the Mediterranean, possibly reaching as far as Britain for tin and Africa's Atlantic coast. Carthage, their most famous colony, grew into a mighty city that later rivaled Rome. Other colonies dotted Spain, Sicily, and North Africa, extending Phoenician influence across continents. Religion and culture reflected their seafaring life. They worshipped Baal, Astarte, and Melkart, gods tied to fertility, storms, and protection. Temples rose in their cities, while rituals and myths blended with those of neighboring peoples. Their art and craftsmanship, especially in glass and metalwork, revealed a culture both practical and refined. Yet the Phoenicians were vulnerable to larger empires. Assyria, Babylon, and later Persia absorbed their cities, while Carthage carried their legacy forward until Rome destroyed it. The original Phoenician homeland faded into obscurity, its people assimilated, its independence lost. Still, their impact endures. Every time we write with an alphabet, we echo Phoenician ingenuity. Every time we imagine ancient ships braving unknown seas, we recall their daring. They were masters of the sea, merchants of memory, and inventors of words, a civilization that thrived not by conquest, but by connection. The Phoenicians remind us that influence does not always come from armies or empires. Sometimes it comes from trade, ideas, and the courage to sail beyond the horizon. Across the vast steppes of Eurasia, from the Black Sea to the fringes of Central Asia, the Scythians roamed as nomadic horsemen whose legends still shimmer in history. fierce warriors, skilled riders, and masters of the bow. They lived not in cities, but on the move, their lives bound to the rhythm of the grasslands and the herds they followed. The Scythians were renowned for their warrior culture. Herodotus, the Greek historian, described them as formidable fighters who struck swiftly from horseback, using composite bows with deadly precision. Their mobility made them nearly impossible to defeat in open terrain, and their reputation spread across the ancient world as mercenaries, raiders, and defenders of their lands. Yet they were not only warriors. The Scythians left behind golden treasures of astonishing beauty, buried in Kurgan's great burial mounds scattered across the steppes. These artifacts include intricate jewelry, weapons, and ornaments, often decorated with animal motifs, stags, panthers, and eagles rendered in flowing, dynamic forms. The Scythian animal style became one of the most distinctive artistic traditions of the ancient world, reflecting both their spiritual beliefs and their connection to nature. Their society was deeply tied to ritual and myth. Burial mounds reveal that leaders were interred with horses, weapons, and treasures, suggesting a belief in an afterlife where warriors continued their journeys. Women, too, held significant roles. Archaeological evidence shows female warriors buried with arms, echoing legends of Amazons that may have been inspired by Scythian women. The Scythians were also traders, linking east and west. Their lands formed part of the early Silk Road, where goods, ideas, and cultures mingled. They carried furs, horses, and slaves, while receiving wine, textiles, and luxury items from Greece and Persia. This exchange enriched their culture, blending nomadic traditions with influences from settled civilizations. By the 3rd century BCE, the Scythians began to decline, challenged by rival nomadic groups and expanding empires. Yet their legacy endured in art, myth, and memory. Their treasures, unearthed from burial mounds, gleam with the brilliance of a people who lived fiercely and left behind echoes of gold and legend. The Scythians remind us that civilization does not always mean cities or monuments. They were nomads of the steppe, warriors of the horse, and artists of gold, a culture that thrived in motion, leaving behind treasures that still shine with the spirit of their world. Throughout history, great civilizations have risen with brilliance and fallen into silence. From the Minoans to the Maya, from Carthage to the Incas, each left behind ruins, myths, and echoes that remind us of both human ingenuity and fragility. Their stories are not only tales of the past, they are warnings and lessons for the present. Environmental stress, droughts, floods, volcanic eruptions, and resource depletion often undermined societies. The Maya faced prolonged drought, while the Minoans were devastated by the eruption of Thera. Conflict and conquest, external invasions, or internal wars weakened empires. Carthage fell to Rome, the Aztecs and Incas to Spanish conquest. Economic fragility, trade disruptions, or over-reliance on limited resources destabilized economies. The Nabateans thrived on caravan routes, but when trade shifted, Petra declined. Social and political strains, inequality, corruption, or rigid hierarchies eroded trust and resilience. The Hittites and Scythians struggled with internal divisions as much as external threats. Cultural rigidity, civilizations that failed to adapt to changing circumstances often collapsed. The ancestral Pueblones abandoned their cliff dwellings when environmental and social pressures became unsustainable. Adaptability is survival. Societies that innovate in response to crises endure longer. Modern nations must adapt to climate change, technological disruption, and shifting demographics. Balance with nature. Exploiting resources without sustainability leads to collapse. Ancient agricultural failures mirror today's environmental challenges. Resilience through diversity. Civilizations that embraced cultural exchange, like the Phoenicians, thrived. Modern societies benefit from openness and global cooperation. Equity and cohesion. Internal divisions weaken societies more than external threats. Building inclusive systems strengthens resilience. Humility before time. Even the greatest empires can vanish. Remembering this fosters humility and responsibility in how we build our future. Lost civilizations remind us that progress is not guaranteed. Their ruins are not only monuments of what was achieved, but also warnings of what can be lost. Modern society, with its technology and global reach, faces challenges as daunting as those of the past: climate change, inequality, conflict, and overconsumption. The lesson is clear. Civilizations fall when they forget their dependence on nature, neglect their people, or fail to adapt. They endure when they innovate, cooperate, and respect the fragile balance of life. The ruins of the past are not just stones, they are mirrors. In them, we see both our vulnerabilities and our possibilities. Across the ruins of temples, the sands of deserts, and the depths of oceans, humanity continues to search for echoes of forgotten worlds. From Atlantis to the Incas, from the Scythians to the Celts, each civilization leaves us with questions that history has not fully answered. Buried archives, countless tablets, scrolls, and inscriptions remain undiscovered beneath ruins or locked in caves. Each could rewrite our understanding of the past. Lost technologies, the precision of Inca stonework, the astronomical knowledge of the Maya, and the engineering of Nabatean water systems hint at skills we still struggle to replicate. Unexplored depths, oceans, cover most of our planet, hiding potential ruins of coastal civilizations swallowed by rising seas. Living traditions, descendants of ancient peoples carry oral histories, rituals, and languages that preserve fragments of knowledge in ways archaeology cannot. The mysteries endure not because they are unsolvable, but because they remind us that history is vast, fragile, and incomplete. Each discovery, a shard of pottery, a buried tomb, a forgotten script, is a whisper from the past, urging us to listen more closely. And so, as we close this journey through lost civilizations, we are left with more wonder than certainty. The ruins speak, but softly. The treasures gleam, but faintly. The myths linger, half remembered, half imagined. Perhaps somewhere, hidden in earth or sea, ancient knowledge still waits for us, patient, timeless, and ready to be found. For now, let the mysteries rest. The stones will keep their secrets a little longer, the oceans will guard their depths, and the stars will shine as they did for the Maya, the Egyptians, and all who dreamed before us. May your dreams wander through ruins and legends, and may tomorrow bring new discoveries. Good night.